My husband, ignoring my salary of $1.5 million, said, "Hey, you poor sick woman. I've already processed the divorce papers. Get out of my house tomorrow." But 3 days later, he called me in a panic. "Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. Medicine? You think I went out to get you medicine?" Richard laughed, a cold, sharp sound that echoed off the high ceilings of the master bedroom. He stood at the foot of the bed, looming over me, still wearing his expensive suit, his face twisted not with concern, but with pure, unadulterated disgust. "I brought something much better than medicine, Meredith. This is a cure. A cure for both of us." He tossed a thick manila folder onto the bed. It landed heavily on my legs, sliding slightly over the silk duvet. My hands were shaking so violently from the fever that I could barely grip the edge of the stiff paper. My body felt like it was on fire, my temperature hovering near a dangerous 104 degrees, but the look in my husband's eyes sent a chill through me that froze my very marrow. "Open it," he commanded, his voice devoid of any warmth. "Unless you're too weak to even do that." I struggled to sit up, my head swimming with dizziness. With trembling fingers, I opened the folder. The bold, black letters at the top of the first document screamed at me, blurring in and out of focus through my tear-filled eyes. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce papers. "Richard?" I whispered, my voice raspy and broken. "What is this? I asked you for antibiotics. I can't breathe." "Stop it. Just stop the act," he snapped, pacing the room now, his energy frantic and aggressive. "I am done, Meredith. I am done coming home to a sick, useless woman. I am done dragging you through life. Look at you. You're pathetic." Before I continue with how my husband tried to destroy me and how he ended up regretting the day he was born, please leave a comment letting me know what part of the world you are watching from. Thank you for being here with me. To understand the magnitude of this betrayal, you have to understand the state I was in. For 2 days, I had been confined to this bed, utterly helpless. I had caught a severe viral infection that seemed to shut down my entire system. My throat was so swollen I could barely swallow water. My joints ached as if they were being pulled apart. This morning, I had begged Richard, the man I had devoted the last 5 years of my life to stop at the pharmacy on his way home from work. He had promised. He had kissed my forehead, a cold, perfunctory peck, and said he would take care of it. I had spent the entire day drifting in and out of fever dreams, checking the clock, waiting for the sound of his car in the driveway. The house was so large, so silent. It felt like a tomb. Every tick of the grandfather clock downstairs felt like a hammer hitting a nail into my coffin. I was thirsty, so incredibly thirsty, but the pitcher on the nightstand was empty, and I didn't have the strength to walk to the bathroom to refill it. When I finally heard the garage door open, relief had washed over me. I thought, thank God, he's here. He'll have the medicine. He'll help me sit up. He'll hold a glass of water to my lips. I had prepared myself to be grateful. I had prepared myself to apologize for being a burden, for being sick. But the footsteps coming up the stairs weren't the hurried steps of a worried husband. They were heavy, deliberate, angry. And then the door had burst open, and my reality shattered. "You're surprised?" Richard scoffed, seeing the shock on my face. He walked over to the window and looked out at the sprawling lawn, his back to me. "I've been planning this for months. I just waited for the right time. And honestly, seeing you like this, lying there like a corpse, it just confirmed everything. You're dead weight, Meredith. You've always been dead weight." "I'm just sick, Richard," I managed to choke out, tears streaming down my face, hot against my fevered skin. "People get sick. I took care of you when you broke your leg. I took care of you when you had the flu last year. That's different, he roared, spinning around to face me. I am a successful executive. I bring value to this world. You? What do you do? You stay at home. You cook. You clean. And now you can't even do that. You're just a drain on my resources. He walked closer, his eyes scanning the room I had decorated, the sanctuary I had built for us. I want a wife who matches my status. Someone vibrant. Someone young. Someone who doesn't look like this. He gestured vaguely at my sweating, pale form. I clutched the divorce papers to my chest, not because I wanted them, but because they were the only thing grounding me to reality. The fever was making the room spin, making the edges of his silhouette blur. I felt like I was hallucinating. This couldn't be the man who vowed to love me in sickness and in health. This was a stranger. A cruel, heartless stranger wearing my husband's face. Please, I whispered, my pride crumbling under the weight of my illness. We can talk about this later. Please, just get me some water. My head hurts so much. Richard just stared at me. For a second, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, maybe memory, maybe a shred of humanity. But then it was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating sneer. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and checked a message. He smiled at the screen, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. No, he said simply. I'm not getting you water. I'm not getting you medicine. I'm not your servant anymore, Meredith. I'm a free man. And I have plans tonight. He looked at me one last time, his gaze stripping away every ounce of dignity I had left. Read the papers, he said. And don't fall asleep. You have a lot of packing to do. The silence that followed his declaration was heavier than the air in the room. Richard didn't leave immediately. He seemed to derive a sick sort of pleasure from watching me struggle to process his words. He walked over to the vanity, my vanity, and picked up a bottle of perfume. He sniffed it, grimaced, and set it back down with a clatter. Listen to me closely, you broke, useless woman, he began, his voice dropping to a menacingly low register. Do you think I want to spend the rest of my prime years playing nursemaid to a poverty-stricken housewife? I have a reputation to maintain. I have a future. Poverty-stricken? I repeated, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. The fever was making my thoughts sluggish, but his insults were sharp enough to cut through the haze. We built this life together. We? Richard threw his head back and laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. There is no we when it comes to the assets, Meredith. Look around you. He swept his arm wide, encompassing the luxurious bedroom, the high-end furniture, the view of the manicured estate outside. This house. It's in my name. The cars in the garage? My name. The bank accounts? My name. You brought nothing into this marriage but your sad little suitcase and your love. And you will leave with exactly that. He walked over to the bed and sat on the edge, careful not to touch me, as if my sickness was contagious poverty. I've consulted with the best divorce lawyer in the city. The prenuptial agreement, which you so naively signed, is ironclad. You get nothing. No alimony. No division of property. You are entitled to zero. I remembered that prenup. He had presented it to me 5 years ago, claiming his parents insisted on it because of some family trust. I had signed it without reading it closely because I trusted him. I loved him. I didn't care about money. I never had. Why are you doing this now? I asked, a fresh wave of tears blurring my vision. While I'm like this? Because I'm done waiting, he spat. And because Tiffany is waiting for me. The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. Tiffany. Tiffany? I asked, though deep down, I think I already knew. The late nights at the office. The new passwords on his phone. The scent of vanilla and cheap musk that sometimes clung to his shirts. Yes, Tiffany, Richard said, his face lighting up with a sickening pride. She's 29. She's a model. She's vibrant, healthy, and beautiful. She understands my position as a successful man. She appreciates me. Unlike you, who just drags me down with your depression and your illnesses. He stood up, adjusting his cuffs, looking at himself in the mirror. We're getting married as soon as the ink is dry on these papers. She's going to move in here. We're going to redecorate. Get rid of all this dullness you brought into the house. He turned back to me, his expression hardening into stone. So, here is how this is going to work. I don't want to see your face in this house tomorrow. I'm giving you until dawn. Get out. Pack your rags and leave. Dawn? I gasped. Richard, I can't walk. I have a fever of 104. Where am I supposed to go? That is not my problem, he said coldly. Go to a shelter. Go back to that rundown trailer park your parents live in. Crawl into a ditch for all I care. Just be gone. He pointed a finger at me. And don't you dare touch anything of value. No jewelry that I bought you. No electronics. No designer clothes. Those are assets of the marriage, and since I paid for them, they stay. You take the clothes on your back and whatever personal trash you brought with you 5 years ago. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, the love I had held for him didn't just crack, it evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard knot in the pit of my stomach. He wasn't just divorcing me. He was trying to destroy me. He wanted to erase me. You're kicking me out, to die? I whispered. Don't be dramatic, he sneered. You're not dying. You're just pathetic. Crying won't change the legal reality, Meredith. The papers are filed. The process is in motion. He checked his watch. I'm going to sleep at Tiffany's loft tonight. I can't stand the smell of sickness in here. Tomorrow morning, at 9 a.m. sharp, I'm sending a crew to change the locks. If you are still here, I will have the police remove you for trespassing. Do you understand me? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Good, he said, taking my silence for submission. Enjoy your last night in luxury, Meredith. It's all downhill for you from here. He turned on his heel and walked out. The bedroom door slammed shut, vibrating the walls. A moment later, I heard the heavy thud of the front door, followed by the roar of his sports car engine, the engine of the car I had paid for, though he didn't know it, fading into the distance. I was alone. Sick, divorced, evicted, and replaced. The silence rushed back in, deafening and terrifying. But as the sound of his car vanished, something strange happened. The fear didn't consume me. Instead, a different kind of heat began to rise within me, burning hotter than the fever. It was the heat of absolute, scorching rage. I lay there for 15 minutes, letting the tears flow until they naturally stopped. I gasped for air, my chest heaving, listening to the emptiness of the house. He was gone. He was really gone. And he thought he had won. He thought he had discarded a piece of trash. Slowly, painfully, I wiped my face with the back of my hand. The despair that had threatened to drown me began to recede, replaced by a clarity that was sharp and icy. Richard had made a calculation based on the woman he thought I was, Meredith, the housewife. Meredith, the pushover. Meredith, the poor girl from nowhere. He had no idea who he had just declared war on. I reached under my pillow. It wasn't the pillow I usually slept on, it was the extra one I kept propped up for reading. My fingers brushed against something hard and cool. I pulled it out. It was a sleek, black smartphone. Not the 3-year-old model with the cracked screen that sat on my nightstand, the one Richard monitored, the one he constantly complained about paying the bill for. This was a satellite-encrypted device, state-of-the-art, worth more than Richard's entire wardrobe. It was my only secret. The one thing I had kept from him, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need to have a safety line to my past life, the life I had paused to be his wife. I pressed my thumb to the sensor. The screen flared to life, bypassing the lock instantly. There were no social media apps. No games. No photo albums of cats or sunsets. There was only a secure email client, a banking app for high-net-worth individuals, and a contact list with only 5 names. I tapped the contact labeled Diane COO. My heart pounded against my ribs, not from the illness anymore, but from the adrenaline of the mask finally slipping off. I pressed the call button. It rang once. Chairwoman? Diane's voice came through instantly, sharp, alert, and professional. It was 9 p.m., but I knew she would answer. She always answered. We didn't expect a check-in until next week. Is everything all right? I took a deep breath, fighting the rasp in my throat. I needed to sound like myself. Not Meredith the victim, but Meredith the chairwoman. Diane, I said. My voice was weak, but the steel underneath was unmistakable. Contingency Plan Omega. Activate it. There was a pause on the other end. A heavy, pregnant silence. Plan Omega was the nuclear option. It was the protocol we had drafted 5 years ago, a break glass in case of emergency plan that I had prayed I would never have to use. It meant my cover was blown. It meant the marriage was over. It meant war. Understood, ma'am. Diane's voice dropped an octave, shifting from surprise to tactical efficiency. What happened? Are you compromised? I've been evicted, I said, the words tasting like ash. Richard filed for divorce. He kicked me out. He gave me until dawn to vacate the premises. He's marrying his mistress. The audacity, Diane hissed. I could hear the sound of a keyboard clacking furiously in the background. He has no idea who he's dealing with. Ma'am, your health status? Your biometrics are showing elevated stress and temperature on our remote monitor. I'm sick, Diane. Viral infection. High fever. I can barely walk. He left me here to rot. He did what? Diane's professional veneer cracked for a split second, revealing the fury of a best friend. That son of a. Okay. We are moving. I am not sending a standard ambulance. I'm dispatching the extraction team. ETA 20 minutes. Do you need the police? No, I said quickly. No police. Not yet. I want this quiet. He thinks I'm a helpless, poor woman who's going to crawl to a shelter. I want to let him believe that. I looked around the room where I had nursed him through his failures, where I had listened to his dreams, where I had secretly funded his entire lifestyle. Diane, I said. Bring the team to the service entrance. No sirens. And prepare the legal department. I want a full asset review ready by morning. Consider it done, Chairwoman, Diane replied. We're coming to get you. Hold on. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking less now. The fever was still burning me up, but my mind was laser-focused. I looked at the divorce papers still lying on the bed. I reached out and closed the folder. You want a divorce, Richard? I whispered to the empty room. I'll give you a divorce. But first, I'm going to teach you a lesson about value. The 20 minutes I waited for Diane felt like an eternity, yet they passed in a blur of feverish preparation. I didn't pack a suitcase. Richard had told me to take only my rags, to take nothing of value. He wanted me to leave with nothing? Fine. I would leave with absolutely nothing. I managed to stand up, my legs trembling violently under my weight. I stripped off the silk nightgown Richard had bought me for our anniversary last year, the one he said made me look presentable. I let it drop to the floor in a puddle of fabric. I walked to the back of the closet, past the designer dresses he claimed were assets of the marriage, and found the old, worn-out sweatpants and oversized hoodie I had worn when we first met. They smelled like dust and memories. I pulled them on. The fabric was rough against my fevered skin, but it felt like armor. It felt like me. I sat on the edge of the bed, shivering, clutching my secret phone. Exactly 19 minutes after I hung up, my phone vibrated. We are at the service entrance. Perimeter is clear. I didn't have the strength to walk down the stairs. I knew that. But I wouldn't have to. The door to the bedroom opened silently. It wasn't kicked in like Richard had done. It glided open. Two figures in dark tactical medical uniforms entered, moving with the precision of special forces. They weren't regular paramedics. They were the elite medical security team from Meredith Global. Behind them strode Diane. She was wearing a trench coat over her business suit, her face set in a grim line. When she saw me, huddled in old sweats, pale, sweating, and shaking, her composure shattered. "Oh, Meredith," she whispered, rushing to my side. She placed a hand on my forehead and hissed at the heat radiating from me. "He left you like this? He actually left you like this?" "I'm okay, Diane," I rasped, though I clearly wasn't. "I just need to get out of here." "Get the stretcher," Diane ordered the team, her voice like a whip crack. "Portable 4, now. Start a saline drip with antivirals immediately." The team moved instantly. Within seconds, I was being lifted gently onto a collapsible stretcher. A needle pricked my arm, and I felt the cool rush of fluids entering my dehydrated veins. It was the first relief I had felt in 2 days. "We're taking you to the private suite at St. Jude's," Diane said, walking beside me as they wheeled me out into the hallway. "Dr. Evans is already prepping the isolation unit." As we passed through the living room, my eyes caught the large wedding portrait hanging above the fireplace. It was a beautiful photo. We looked so happy. I looked so adoring. Richard looked so protective. It was a lie. All of it. "Stop," I whispered. The team halted immediately. "Ma'am?" Diane asked. I looked at the photo, then at the vase on the mantel, then at the expensive Persian rug underfoot. "Leave everything," I said, my voice gaining a momentary strength. "Don't take a single thing. Not my toothbrush. Not my books. Not even my coat." "But ma'am, your mother's locket." Diane started. "It's in the safe deposit box at the bank, not here," I said. "Anything in this house, leave it. Richard said I brought nothing, so I leave with nothing. I want him to come back to a house that is perfectly undisturbed, except for the fact that I have vanished." "Understood," Diane nodded. "We leave no trace." They carried me out the front door. The cool night air hit my face, and I inhaled greedily. In the driveway, there were no flashing lights. Just a sleek, black Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van with tinted windows. It looked like a diplomatic transport vehicle. They loaded me into the back, which was equipped like a mobile ICU. The doors slid shut with a solid, reassuring thud, sealing me off from the house, from Richard, from the life I had tried so hard to build. As the vehicle began to glide down the long driveway, Diane sat beside me, holding my hand. "We have the legal team on standby," she said softly. "Do you want to initiate the asset freeze immediately?" I closed my eyes, the medication starting to pull me under. "No," I whispered. "He gave me until dawn. I'll give him 3 days. Let him live in his victory. Let him think he's won. Let him invite his mistress over. Let him plan his new life. 3 days? Diane asked, raising an eyebrow. That's generous. A small, cold smile touched my lips. It's not generosity, Diane, I said. It's the drop. The higher he climbs in the next 3 days, the harder he's going to fall when I pull the rug out. I want him to taste the victory before I choke him with it. The four-drip was doing its work, cooling the fire in my blood, but as the van sped through the night toward the city, my mind drifted back. Back to the beginning. Back to why a woman with a net worth of over $500 million was living in the suburbs pretending to be a penniless housewife. 5 years ago, I wasn't just Meredith. I was Meredith Blackwood, the sole heiress and CEO of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, which I had rebranded as Meredith Global Enterprises. I had inherited the company when my parents died in a plane crash when I was 22. I spent my 20s drowning in work, fighting off board members who thought I was a naive little girl, and turning the company into an empire. But I was lonely. God, I was so lonely. Every man I dated eventually revealed himself. It was always about the money. Always. I'd see them glancing at the check, calculating my worth. I'd hear them bragging to their friends about landing a whale. One fiancé tried to embezzle from the charity foundation I ran. Another proposed to me only to present a prenup that guaranteed him $50 million if we divorced after 2 years. I became paranoid. I stopped trusting anyone. I retreated into my work. Then, I met Richard. I was doing undercover charity work, something I did to stay grounded. I was serving food at a soup kitchen in downtown Chicago, wearing no makeup, jeans, and a volunteer t-shirt. Richard came in, not to eat, but to volunteer as part of a court-ordered community service for a minor traffic violation. He didn't know who I was. To him, I was just Meredith, the quiet volunteer with sad eyes. He was struggling then. He had just been fired from his first sales job. He was depressed, angry at the world, and feeling like a failure. But he was kind to me. He helped me carry heavy boxes of canned goods. He made jokes about the mystery meat we were serving. He walked me to my car, a beat-up Honda Civic I used for these occasions, to make sure I was safe. We started talking. We started dating. I told him I was a freelance copywriter struggling to make ends meet. I wanted to see if someone could love me for me, without the millions, without the private jets, without the power. And for a while, he did. Or I thought he did. He seemed to love my simplicity. He loved my cooking. We moved into a small, rented apartment. I paid half the rent from my copywriting money, which was actually funneled from a secret account. Those were the happiest days of my life. I felt seen. I felt human. When he proposed, he did it with a ring that cost him 2 months' salary. It was tiny, flawed, and perfect. I said yes without hesitation. I thought I had found my unicorn, the man who loved Meredith, not the CEO. I remembered the night he came home crying because he couldn't find a job. I held him. I told him I believed in him. I'm a loser, Meredith, he had sobbed into my shoulder. I can't even buy you a decent dinner. You deserve better. I don't need better, I had whispered, stroking his hair. I just need you. We'll build it together, Richard. I promise. I decided then that I would help him. But I couldn't just hand him $1 million, it would destroy his ego, and it would reveal my secret. So, I did it from the shadows. I used my connections. I made a few anonymous calls. Suddenly, Richard got an interview at a mid-sized logistics firm. Suddenly, he got the job. He came home beaming, lifting me off my feet. I did it, Mayor. I did it on my own, he shouted. I smiled and kissed him. I knew you could. I thought I was helping him build confidence. I didn't realize I was feeding a monster. Over the next few years, as I quietly orchestrated his rise from the background, Richard changed. The money, his salary, which was good but not extravagant, started to go to his head. He became obsessed with status. He started criticizing my cheap clothes. He started making comments about how I lacked ambition because I was just a housewife, since I had stopped the fake copywriting job to manage the household and, secretly, my empire. He forgot the woman who held him when he was nothing. He started believing his own hype. He started believing he was a self-made king, and I was just the peasant he had graciously allowed into his castle. Lying in the medical van, a single tear escaped my eye. My experiment had failed. I wanted true love so badly that I had created a lie, and that lie had birthed a narcissist who had just kicked me out to die. The betrayal went deeper than just emotional abandonment. It was financial, and the irony of it was so sharp it could draw blood. Flashback to 1 year ago. Richard had been promoted to regional director, again, a move subtly influenced by a subsidiary of my company acquiring a stake in his firm. His ego was out of control. He decided he needed a mansion. He needed a Porsche. He needed to look the part of the wealthy executive. He found the house on Willow Creek Lane. It was listed for $4 million. "We can't afford this, Richard," I had told him gently, playing the role of the cautious, budget-conscious wife. "Stop being so small-minded, Meredith," he had yelled. "You have to spend money to make money. I'm taking out a business loan. I'm leveraging my future bonuses. It's a calculated risk. Something you wouldn't understand." He took out a massive, high-interest loan from a private equity lender to buy the house and the car. He put everything in his name, claiming it was for liability reasons, but I knew it was because he didn't want me to have a claim on it. Then, the market dipped. His calculated risk blew up in his face. 6 months ago, he was on the verge of defaulting. He stopped sleeping. He was drinking heavily. He was terrified of losing the house and being humiliated in front of his colleagues. I couldn't watch him suffer. I was still his wife. I still loved the man he used to be. So, I called Diane. "Buy the debt," I instructed her. "Chairwoman, this is a bad investment," Diane had argued. "The asset is over-leveraged. And the borrower, your husband, is high risk. Just do it," I ordered. "Have Meredith Global's distressed asset division, Phoenix Capital, buy the note from his lender. Buy it all. The mortgage, the car loan, everything." Diane did it. We bought Richard's debt. We became his bank. Richard came home that day looking like he had seen a ghost, but happy. "You won't believe it, Meredith. The bank sold my loan to some new investment group, and they restructured the terms. I have a grace period. I'm saved." He didn't know he was saved by his wife. He didn't know that every month he wrote a check to Phoenix Capital, he was writing a check to me. But there was one thing Diane insisted on inserting into the new loan agreement. A moral clause. It was standard in some high-level executive contracts, but Diane made this one specific. Clause 11b, the borrower agrees to maintain a standard of personal conduct that reflects positively on the lender's investment. Any act of moral turpitude, including but not limited to public scandal, criminal activity, or the abandonment of familial responsibilities, constitutes a material breach of contract and triggers an immediate recall of the full principal amount. I had laughed when I saw it. "Diane, isn't this excessive?" "It's insurance, Meredith," Diane had said seriously. "He's unstable. If he ever turns on you, this clause is the kill switch." I never thought I would use it. I thought it was just legal jargon. But as the medical van pulled up to the private entrance of the hospital, I realized Diane had been right all along. Richard hadn't just divorced his wife. He had declared war on his creditor. He was living in my house. Driving my car. Spending my money. And he had just kicked me out. The realization hardened my heart into a diamond. He wanted to claim the assets were his? Fine. I would let him see exactly who owned what. Diane, I said, opening my eyes as the van came to a halt. The fever was still there, but the fire in my belly was hotter. Yes, Chairwoman? Contact the legal team at Phoenix Capital. Tell them to prepare a notice of default. Cite Clause 11B. Diane smiled, a sharp, predatory smile. Breach of contract due to abandonment of familial responsibilities? Exactly, I said. He wants to marry Tiffany? He better hope she's rich. Because in 3 days, he's going to owe me $4 million due immediately. The next morning, while I was hooked up to IVs and monitors in the VVIP suite of the hospital, receiving the best care money could buy, Richard was waking up in what he thought was his kingdom. I didn't need to be there to know what was happening. I had installed security cameras in the common areas of the house years ago, ostensibly for burglar protection, but really because my security team insisted on it for my safety. I had access to the feeds on my secure tablet. Lying in my hospital bed, I watched. It was 10 a.m. Richard walked into the house, holding hands with her. Tiffany. She was exactly as he had described, young, blonde, and undeniably beautiful in a plastic, manufactured way. She was wearing a tight white dress that looked more appropriate for a club than a Tuesday morning. "Oh my God, babe!" Tiffany squealed, her voice grating even through the audio feed. She spun around in the foyer, her heels clicking on the marble. "It's huge. And it's finally ours?" "All ours, baby," Richard said, puffing out his chest. "I told you I'd handle her." "She's gone." "Did she put up a fight?" Tiffany asked, walking over to the living room and running her hand over the sofa I had picked out. "She didn't dare," Richard laughed. "I told her to be out by dawn. And look." He gestured to the pristine, empty room. "She didn't take a thing. Probably too weak to carry anything. Pathetic." "Ew," Tiffany said, wrinkling her nose. "Ideally, we burn everything she touched." "This sofa? Hideous. It smells like old people." I watched, gripping the edges of my hospital blanket, as she criticized everything. The curtains were drab. The art was boring. My kitchen, where I had cooked thousands of meals for Richard, was outdated. "Don't worry, honey," Richard cooed, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You can change whatever you want. I'm the king of this castle now, and you're the queen. We'll hire a designer tomorrow. Get rid of all this junk." "Junk?" I whispered to the screen. That junk was hand-selected Italian leather and limited edition prints. They walked up the stairs to the master bedroom. My heart clenched. That was my sanctuary. Tiffany threw open the door and flopped onto the bed where I had been lying in agony less than 24 hours ago. "So much space," she cheered. Then she saw the nightstand. My side of the bed. She opened the drawer. Empty. She went to the closet. She pulled open the doors. "Whoa," she said. She really left her clothes? She pulled out a vintage Chanel jacket I had bought at a consignment shop years ago, or so I told Richard. It was actually brand new. She held it up against herself. "Kinda frumpy," she giggled. "But maybe I can sell some of this on eBay? Make some pocket money?" "Throw it out," Richard said, coming up behind her and kissing her neck. "I don't want any trace of her in here. Tonight, we celebrate. A new beginning. Just you and me. And your money," Tiffany added, turning to kiss him. "And my money," Richard agreed. It was nauseating. It was like watching vultures pick at a carcass before the animal was even dead. They moved through my house with such entitlement, such arrogance. Richard looked happier than I had seen him in years. He looked liberated. He had erased me completely. In his mind, I was already a distant memory, a problem solved. I'm going to order the best catering in the city for tonight, Richard announced. Lobster, Wagyu beef, the works. I want to toast to my freedom. Yay! Tiffany clapped her hands. Can we get that expensive champagne? The one with the gold label? Anything for you, my love, Richard said. I'm a rich man. I can afford it. I turned off the tablet. I couldn't watch anymore. The bile rose in my throat. Director Evans, I said to Diane, who was working on her laptop in the corner of the room. Yes, Chairwoman? Is the trap set? The trap is set, Diane confirmed. We've notified the bank holding his credit cards. They are technically issued by a subsidiary bank we own a controlling stake in. We've flagged his accounts for suspicious activity pending a review. Good, I said, leaning back against the pillows. He wants to celebrate with lobster and champagne? Let's see how he pays for it. The evening of day one brought the first crack in Richard's facade. I didn't see this on camera, but I saw the transaction logs later. Richard had invited a few of his bros over to show off his new life and his new fiancée. He wanted to make a splash. He called Le Monde, the most exclusive catering service in the city. He ordered a feast fit for royalty, imported seafood, truffles, and yes, the champagne Tiffany wanted. The total bill came to $2,500. At 7 p.m., the catering van arrived. The delivery staff set up the spread in the dining room. It looked magnificent. Tiffany was taking selfies with the lobster, posting them to Instagram with captions like #newlife, #blessed, #upgrade. Richard stood there, swirling a glass of scotch, looking every inch the master of the universe. Then, the head caterer approached him with a mobile card reader. Mr. Blackwood, the man said politely. If we could just settle the bill before we leave? Of course, Richard said loudly, making sure his friends heard. Put it on the black card. He pulled out his sleek, black credit card, the one he was so proud of, the one whose limit I had secretly increased 3 times so he wouldn't be embarrassed at business dinners. He handed it over with a flourish. The caterer inserted the chip. A moment of silence. Beep. I'm sorry, sir, the caterer said, frowning at the machine. It says declined. Richard laughed, a nervous, dismissive chuckle. That's ridiculous. The limit on that card is 50,000. Try it again. It's probably your machine. The caterer tried again. Beep. Declined, do not honor. The room went quiet. Tiffany stopped taking selfies. Richard's friends exchanged awkward glances. Here, use this one, Richard said, his face flushing slightly red. He pulled out his platinum visa. Beep. Declined. Sweat started to bead on Richard's forehead. This is absurd. There must be a system outage at the bank. I just used these yesterday. Do you have another form of payment, sir? The caterer asked, his politeness straining. Cash? Debit? I. Richard stammered. He pulled out his debit card. This was linked to his salary account. Surely, there was money there. Beep. Insufficient funds. Insufficient funds? Richard shouted. That's impossible. I just got paid last week. Tiffany walked over, her voice sharp. Richard, what is going on? This is embarrassing. It's a mistake, babe. It's a glitch, Richard insisted, his hands shaking now. He looked at the caterer, who was now looking at him with suspicion. Look, I'm good for it. You know who I am. Just bill me. I'm afraid I can't do that, sir. Policy. Payment upon delivery, the caterer said firmly. He signaled to his team. Pack it up, boys. Wait! Richard yelled. Don't take the food. He scrambled. He had a secret stash of cash in the safe in his study, money he had skimmed from bonuses that he didn't tell me about. I knew about it, of course, but I had let him keep it as his play money. Wait here, he snapped. He ran to the study, opened the safe, and grabbed the stack of bills. It was his emergency fund. He ran back downstairs and threw the cash at the caterer. Here. Take it. Keep the change. The caterer counted the money, nodded, and left the food. But the damage was done. The air of invincibility was gone. Everything okay, Rich? One of his friends asked, looking at his beer bottle doubtfully. Fine. It's just the damn bank's fraud protection, Richard lied, wiping sweat from his upper lip. They probably froze the cards because of the large transaction. I'll call them in the morning and tear them a new one. Tiffany looked at him, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't looking at him like a king anymore. She was looking at him like a liability. You better fix it, she whispered to him, her voice low and threatening. I didn't sign up for declined cards, Richard. I will, he promised. It's just a glitch. It wasn't a glitch. It was the first domino. Lying in my hospital bed, Diane showed me the alert on the system. Subject attempted transaction. Cards blocked per protocol Omega. He paid cash, Diane noted. He's depleted his liquid reserves. Good, I said. Now he has no safety net. Tomorrow is day 2. Tomorrow, we hit the salary account. Richard went to bed that night belly full of lobster, but his mind was racing. He thought it was an annoyance. He didn't know that while he slept, the machinery of Meredith Global was grinding into gear, preparing to strip him of everything he thought he owned. The fever was breaking. My strength was returning. And Richard's time was running out. The sun rose on day 2, casting a harsh, unforgiving light on Richard's delusions. He didn't sleep well. The humiliation of the catering incident had gnawed at him all night. He woke up determined, angry, and fully convinced that this was all just a massive clerical error. I'm going to the bank, he told Tiffany, who was sulking over a breakfast of cold cereal because the gourmet meal had been taken away. I'm going to get someone fired for this. He dressed in his best suit, an Italian wool blend that cost $3,000, and drove to the downtown branch of Sovereign Wealth Bank. He didn't park in the public lot, he pulled right up to the VIP valet circle. He slammed the door of the Porsche and marched inside, bypassing the long line of regular customers to head straight for the glass-walled office of the branch manager. Mr. Blackwood, the receptionist chirped, though her smile looked a bit strained. Do you have an appointment? I don't need an appointment, Richard barked. I'm a platinum client. Get the manager. Now. 5 minutes later, he was sitting across from Mr. Henderson, the branch manager. Henderson looked uncomfortable. He kept shifting in his leather chair, avoiding Richard's eyes. Fix it, Richard demanded, throwing his black card onto the mahogany desk. Your system embarrassed me in front of my guests last night. Declined? Insufficient funds? Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, Mr. Blackwood, Henderson said quietly. He typed something into his computer and turned the screen so Richard could see it. And the system isn't broken. Your accounts are frozen. Frozen? By who? The IRS? Richard laughed nervously. I pay my taxes. Not the IRS, Henderson said. By the primary lien holder of your debt. A company called Phoenix Capital, a subsidiary of Meredith Global Enterprises. Richard frowned. Meredith Global? Who are they? I've never heard of them. They bought your mortgage and your business loan 6 months ago, Henderson explained. Yesterday, at 5 p.m., we received a Level 1 default notice from their legal department. It triggers an automatic freeze of all liquid assets associated with the debtor to cover the outstanding principal. What principal? Richard stood up, slamming his hands on the desk. I make my monthly payments. I've never missed a payment. According to the notice, Henderson read from a document, you triggered a non-financial breach of contract. Something about the moral clause? Richard blinked. Moral clause? That's boilerplate nonsense. You can't freeze my salary account for that. We can, and we did, Henderson said, his voice hardening. Mr. Blackwood, your salary account balance is currently 0. It has been swept to pay down the interest. Your credit cards have been revoked. You effectively have no money in this institution. You can't do this, Richard stammered, the color draining from his face. I have bills. I have a fiancé. I suggest you contact Phoenix Capital, Henderson said, standing up to signal the meeting was over. And Mr. Blackwood? Valet services are for customers with active accounts. Please move your vehicle immediately, or we will have it towed. Richard stumbled out of the office. The bank lobby seemed to spin. The tellers, the security guard, the other customers, they all seemed to be looking at him, judging him. He felt naked. He felt small. He walked out into the bright sunlight, his hands trembling so hard he dropped his keys. He stared at the Porsche, the car he loved more than he had ever loved me. It was still there, gleaming, beautiful. But for how long? He sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. He had no access to cash. No credit. And a mysterious company named Meredith Global was hunting him. The name nagged at him. Meredith. My name. But he dismissed it instantly. It was a common name. There was no way his frumpy, sick, stay-at-home wife was connected to a corporate shark like Meredith Global. It was just a cruel coincidence. Richard looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a dawn of terror. He was beginning to realize that the ground beneath him wasn't solid rock, it was a trapdoor, and the latch had just been pulled. Richard sat there, paralyzed, the realization crashing over him like a tidal wave. He was broke. Completely, utterly broke. And the nightmare was only just beginning. If you are listening to this and you can feel the walls closing in on Richard, if you are rooting for justice to be served, please help me out. Like this video and comment the number 1 down below. Let me know you are with me, that you are part of this journey. Your support means the world to me. Comment 1 so I can see you. And now, listen closely, because what happens next is where the trap snaps shut. Richard drove home in a daze, driving 10 miles under the speed limit because he couldn't afford a ticket. When he pulled into the driveway of the estate, he saw a nondescript sedan parked near the gate. A man in a cheap suit was leaning against it, smoking a cigarette. As soon as Richard exited his car, the man flicked the cigarette away and approached him. Richard Blackwood? Who's asking? Richard snapped, though his voice lacked its usual bite. You've been served, the man said, shoving a thick envelope into Richard's chest. Courtesy of Sterling and Croft, representing Phoenix Capital and Meredith Global Enterprises. The man got in his car and drove away before Richard could even react. Richard stood in the driveway, tearing open the envelope. His hands were shaking so badly he ripped the paper. He pulled out the legal documents. Notice of acceleration and demand for payment in full. He scanned the pages, his eyes widening with every paragraph. Pursuant to the loan agreement dated, date, the borrower has violated Clause 11, Section B, the moral clause, specifically regarding the preservation of family stability and spousal welfare. Evidence has been submitted confirming the borrower's abandonment of his legally wedded wife, Meredith Blackwood, during a medical crisis, and the cohabitation with a mistress, Ms. Tiffany Miller, on the premises secured by the lender. This conduct constitutes a material breach, damaging the reputation of the collateral. Total amount due immediately, $4,250,000. Failure to remit payment within 24 hours, deadline, 9 a.m., day 3, will result in immediate foreclosure and repossession of all secured assets, including the property at 12 Willow Creek Lane and the 2024 Porsche 911. $4 million? Richard whispered, his knees buckling. 24 hours? He dropped the papers on the asphalt. The wind caught a few pages, scattering them across the lawn like dead leaves. Clause 11b, he muttered. He remembered me handing him the contract a year ago. I had told him, the new lender has some specific requirements about character, Richard. Just make sure you read it. He hadn't read it. He had been too busy popping a bottle of champagne, celebrating that his debt had been magically bought out. He had signed his life away, and his arrogance had been the pen. He gathered the papers and ran inside. The house was quiet. Tiffany was in the living room, painting her nails, surrounded by shopping bags from yesterday's spree, bags she probably planned to return now that the money tap was dry. "Richard?" she asked, looking up. "Why do you look like you've seen a ghost? Did you fix the bank thing?" "We're in trouble, Tiff," Richard said, his voice trembling. "Big trouble. They're calling the loan. All of it." "What does that mean?" Tiffany frowned, blowing on her wet nails. "It means I need $4 million by tomorrow morning, or we lose the house." Tiffany froze. The nail polish brush dropped onto the expensive rug, leaving a bright red stain. "Lose the house?" she screeched. "Are you kidding me? You told me you owned this place. You told me you were rich." "I am rich," Richard yelled back, trying to convince himself. It's a liquidity issue. And it's Meredith's fault. It says I violated the contract by kicking her out." He paced the room, running his hands through his hair. Meredith. She must have known. She must have known someone at this company. That quiet, mousy little woman, she set me up. I don't care who set who up. Tiffany stood up, her face twisting into a scowl. "Fix it, Richard. I am not going to be homeless. I told my friends I was moving into a mansion, not a cardboard box. I will fix it." Richard grabbed his car keys again. "I'm going to find her. She's behind this. I know she is. She's probably crying at her parents' house right now. I'll go there. I'll make her call them off. She'll do anything I say. She always does." "She better," Tiffany hissed. "Because if this house goes, I go." Richard didn't even hear the threat. He was already running out the door. He was desperate. He was terrified. And for the first time in 5 years, he realized that the useless wife he had discarded held the keys to his entire existence. He got back into the Porsche, the engine roaring to life. He drove fast, reckless, heading toward the modest neighborhood where my parents lived, the place he despised, the place he hadn't visited in 3 years because it was beneath him. He was going to demand, to beg, to threaten. Whatever it took. He had to find Meredith. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes. Richard spent the entire time rehearsing what he would say. He would start with anger, how dare she sabotage him? Then he would switch to manipulation, I did this for us, Meredith, don't you see? If that failed, he would resort to pity. He knew I had a soft heart. He knew I couldn't stand to see him suffer. He pulled up to the small, neat bungalow with the white picket fence. It was a humble home, worlds away from the mansion on Willow Creek Lane, but it was filled with love, something Richard never understood. He banged on the front door, hammering it with his fist. "Meredith! Open up! I know you're in there." The door opened. But it wasn't me. And it wasn't my elderly parents. It was Sarah, my older sister. Sarah has always hated Richard. From the moment she met him, she called him a snake in a cheap suit. Sarah is a high school principal, tough, no-nonsense, and fiercely protective. She stood in the doorway, crossing her arms over her chest. She looked at Richard's disheveled suit, his sweaty face, his frantic eyes. She didn't look surprised. She looked disgusted. "Where is she?" Richard demanded, trying to look authoritative but failing miserably. "I need to talk to my wife." "Ex-wife," Sarah corrected calmly. "And she's not here." "Don't lie to me," Richard shouted. "She has nowhere else to go. I know she came crawling back here." "You really don't know her at all, do you?" Sarah let out a dry, humorless laugh. "You think after you kicked her out, while she was sick, I might add, she would just come here and cry? You think she's that weak?" "I need her to make a call," Richard pleaded, his tone shifting to desperation. "There's been a mistake with the bank. A company. Meredith Global, they're trying to ruin me because of her. She needs to tell them to stop. Tell her I'll let her keep the car. I'll even give her some alimony." Sarah stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her to shield our parents from his toxicity. She walked right up to him, invading his personal space. "You listen to me, you pathetic little man," she hissed. "Meredith doesn't want your car. She doesn't want your alimony. And she certainly doesn't want to help you. You don't understand." Richard wiped sweat from his brow. "I'm going to lose everything. The house, the money, everything." "Good," Sarah smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "It's about time. You spent 5 years treating my sister like a servant. You spent her money, oh yes, we know about the money she found for you, and you repaid her by cheating on her with some plastic doll." Richard froze. How do you know about that?" "Meredith knows everything, Richard. She's always known." Sarah poked him hard in the chest. "You thought you were the king? You were just the court jester, dancing while the queen paid the bills." "Please," Richard's voice cracked. He was begging now. "Just tell me where she is. Is she at a hospital? A hotel? I just need 5 minutes." "She is far above you now, Richard," Sarah said, stepping back. "She is somewhere you can't reach. Somewhere you don't belong." She turned to go back inside. "Sarah! Wait!" Richard grabbed the doorframe. Sarah spun around, her eyes blazing. "If you ever come near this house again, I will call the police. And Richard? Save your breath for the lawyers. You're going to need it." She slammed the door in his face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Richard stood on the porch, staring at the painted wood. He was trembling. He had expected a weeping Meredith. He had expected fearful in-laws. Instead, he had been swatted away like a fly. "She's not here," he whispered to himself. "Where is she?" He looked around the modest neighborhood. A realization started to creep in, cold and terrifying. Sarah had said Meredith was far above him. He dragged himself back to his car. The sun was setting. Day 2 was ending. He had 12 hours left before the deadline. He had no money. No wife to manipulate. And the woman waiting for him at home wasn't a partner, she was a parasite who would detach the moment the host died. He started the engine. The drive back to the mansion felt like a funeral procession. Richard returned to the mansion as darkness fell. The house, usually a beacon of light and status, felt ominous. The shadows seemed longer in the corners of the cavernous living room. Tiffany was waiting for him. She wasn't dressed in lingerie or waiting with a drink like she used to. She was sitting on the sofa, fully dressed in jeans and a jacket, scrolling through her phone. The shopping bags from yesterday were gone, likely stashed in her car. Well, she asked, not even looking up. Did you fix it? Richard slumped into the armchair opposite her. He looked aged, 10 years older than he had been 2 days ago. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose. I couldn't find her, he admitted, his voice hollow. Her family blocked me. The bank won't budge. The lawyers won't take my calls without a retainer, and I can't pay the retainer because my cards are frozen. Tiffany finally looked up. Her face was a mask of cold calculation. So, what are you saying? We're broke? It's temporary, Tiff. Richard tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away. I just need a bridge loan. Or maybe you could help. You have that savings account you told me about? The money from your modeling contracts? Tiffany let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. My money? You want to use my money? Just for a few days. To pay the lawyer. To stop the foreclosure. Richard pleaded. We're in this together, right? You're my future wife. Tiffany stood up, looking down at him with pure disdain. The mask slipped completely. There was no love in her eyes. There never had been. I'm not your wife, Richard. And at this rate, I never will be. I didn't sign up to bail out a loser. Loser? Richard recoiled as if slapped. I gave you everything. This house. The jewelry. The trips. You gave me those things because you wanted a trophy. Tiffany yelled. And now you're asking the trophy to pay for the shelf? You lied to me, Richard. You acted like you were a billionaire. But you're just a fraud. A middle management nobody who spent money he didn't have. I did it for you. Richard screamed, standing up. I kicked Meredith out for you. And look how that turned out. Tiffany shot back. At least Meredith had dignity. You're just pathetic. She walked toward the door. Where are you going? Richard asked, panic rising in his chest. I'm going to a hotel. A cheap one, probably, since you can't pay for the Ritz anymore, she spat. And don't expect me to be here tomorrow when the repo men come. I have a reputation to maintain, and I won't be seen with a bankrupt man. You can't leave me. Richard grabbed her arm. Not tonight. I don't want to be alone here. Tiffany shook him off with surprising strength. Let go of me. You're on your own, Richard. Figure it out. She walked out the front door. Richard heard her car start up and speed away. He was alone. Again. 3 nights ago, he had kicked me out of this house. He had thought he was trading up. He had thought he was exchanging a sick, useless wife for a vibrant, loving goddess. Now, the goddess was gone, revealing herself to be a mirage. And the wife? The wife was the ghost haunting every corner of this empty, unpaid-for mansion. Richard walked to the kitchen. He opened the fridge. It was empty, except for a bottle of expensive champagne he had bought for the celebration that never happened. He popped the cork. It was a lonely sound. He drank straight from the bottle, wandering through the dark house. He went to the master bedroom. He saw the empty closet where my clothes used to be. He saw the nightstand where my medicines used to sit. Meredith, he whispered into the darkness. What have you done to me? He didn't sleep that night. He sat in the middle of the living room floor, drinking the warm champagne, watching the clock tick toward 9 a.m. Tick. Tock. The deadline. He was waiting for the executioner. He just didn't realize that the executioner wasn't coming with an axe. She was coming with a fleet of trucks and a clipboard. The morning of day 3 didn't bring sunlight, it brought a gray, oppressive overcast sky. At 8:55 a.m., Richard was still sitting on the floor, still wearing his wrinkled suit from yesterday. He hadn't showered. He smelled of stale alcohol and fear. At 9 a.m. sharp, the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Blackwood? This is the asset recovery team for Phoenix Capital. We have a court order." Richard didn't answer. He didn't move. A few minutes later, he heard the sound of a drill on the front door lock. The lock I had paid for. The door I had welcomed guests through. The door swung open. A team of 6 men in gray uniforms walked in. They were efficient, silent, and terrifying. They weren't the police, they were private contractors, the kind who specialize in high-end repossessions. Leading them was a man in a sharp suit holding a clipboard. He looked around the messy living room, spotted Richard on the floor, and sighed. "Mr. Richard Blackwood?" Richard looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "It's my house," he slurred. "Get out." "Not anymore, sir," the man said calmly. "As of 9:01 a.m., title has reverted to the lender due to default. We are here to secure the premises and assets." The man snapped his fingers. The team moved. 2 men went straight to the garage. A moment later, Richard heard the distinctive roar of the Porsche being started, followed by the grinding sound of it being loaded onto a flatbed truck. "My car!" Richard scrambled to his feet, stumbling toward the window. He watched as his prized possession, the symbol of his manhood, was chained down and driven away. "Please," he begged the man with the clipboard. "Just give me a week. I can get the money. I have contacts." "You had 3 days, Mr. Blackwood. And you ignored the moral clause warning," the man said, checking boxes on his list. "Now, I need you to vacate the property. You may take personal items that fit into one bag. Everything else, furniture, electronics, appliances, stays." "One bag?" Richard gasped. "But, my suits. My watch collection. Purchased with funds from the defaulted loan?" "Those are assets of the lender," the man said coldly. "If you can prove you bought them with independent funds, you can file a claim later. For now, they stay." It was a lie, partially. I didn't want his cheap suits. But I wanted him to feel the strip search of his dignity. I wanted him to feel what I felt when he told me to take only my rags. Richard ran upstairs. He grabbed a gym bag. He threw in a few pairs of underwear, a t-shirt, his toothbrush. He tried to grab his Rolex from the dresser, but a security guard was already standing there. "Leave it, sir," the guard said, hand resting on his belt. Richard dropped the watch. He sobbed. A dry, hacking sound. He walked back downstairs. The house was already being tagged. Bright orange stickers that read seized property were being slapped on the TV, the sofa, the paintings. It was a visual desecration of his ego. "Time to go, sir," the lead agent said, opening the front door. Richard walked out. He stepped onto the driveway. The wind bit through his thin shirt. He had taken off his suit jacket in the heat of the moment and forgotten it inside. The door slammed shut behind him. He heard the deadbolt slide home. A heavy chain was wrapped around the handles, and a padlock was snapped shut. He stood there. No car. No house. No wife. No mistress. Just a gym bag and a hangover. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Higgins from next door was peering through her curtains. The gardener across the street stopped his blower to stare. Richard Blackwood, the man who strutted around the neighborhood like he owned the world, was now a homeless trespasser on his own lawn. He began to walk. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away from the staring eyes. He walked down the long driveway, past the gate that no longer opened for him, and onto the public road. His feet hurt in his dress shoes. His stomach rumbled. He checked his pockets. He had his phone, the old one, with the cracked screen that he hadn't bothered to upgrade because he was waiting for the new model. And he had his wallet, which contained useless plastic cards and a driver's license for an address that was no longer his. He walked for miles, aimlessly, until he reached the city center. He collapsed onto a bench in a public park, surrounded by pigeons and tourists. He was at rock bottom. The fall had been swift, brutal, and total. And in that pit of despair, his mind finally cleared enough to focus on the one name that kept surfacing. The one name that connected everything. Meredith. She was the key. She had to be. With trembling hands, he pulled out his phone. He dialed my number. He didn't expect me to answer. He expected it to go to voicemail or to be disconnected. But he had to try. He had to beg. The phone rang. BRRRNG, BRRRNG. Richard held his breath, pressing the cracked screen against his sweaty ear. He was sitting on a park bench, his expensive shoes scuffed, his eyes wild. He looked like a madman. BRRRNG. On the third ring, the line clicked open. Hello? The voice was mine. But it wasn't the weak, feverish whisper he had heard 3 days ago. It wasn't the submissive, apologetic tone of the wife who cooked his dinner. It was calm. Clear. Cold. It was the voice of a CEO. Meredith! Richard cried out, his voice cracking. Tears streamed down his grimy face. Meredith, oh God, you answered. Help me. Please, you have to help me. 40 floors above him, in the penthouse boardroom of the Meredith Global Tower, I sat at the head of a massive oak table. The room was filled with 12 board members, all dressed in impeccable suits. Diane stood to my right. My phone was placed in the center of the table, on speaker mode. The room was silent. Everyone was listening. Meredith, I don't know what's happening. Richard sobbed, his voice filling the sophisticated room. They took the house. They took the car. I'm on the street. I have nothing. I don't even have money for food. I looked around the table. The board members looked shocked, then disgusted. They were listening to the man who had abandoned their chairwoman. I waited for him to finish his hysterical rambling. I took a sip of water. Who is this? I asked, my voice echoing slightly in the large room. There was a stunned silence on the other end. What? What do you mean? Richard stammered. It's me. It's Richard. Your husband. My husband? I leaned forward, speaking into the microphone. I don't have a husband, Richard. My husband filed for divorce 3 days ago. He told me he was a free man. He told me to get out of his house. I didn't mean it. Richard wailed. I was stressed. I was angry. Please, baby, I made a mistake. It's all a misunderstanding. I'll take it back. I'll tear up the papers. Just come get me. Let's go home. Go home? I let out a short, cynical laugh. To which home, Richard? The one you got evicted from this morning? The one you never actually owned? Richard gasped. You know? How do you know? I know everything, I said, my tone dropping to pure ice. I know about the eviction. I know about the Porsche. I know about Tiffany leaving you last night because you couldn't pay for her lifestyle. And I know you are currently sitting on a bench in Central Park, wearing a dirty suit. How? Richard whispered. The terror in his voice was palpable. Are you watching me? I'm always watching, Richard. Just like I watched you cheat on me for 6 months. Just like I watched you throw my clothes in the trash. Meredith, please, he whimpered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do. I'm starving. I'm scared. I looked at Diane. She nodded. It was time. You want to know what to do? I asked. Yes. Yes. Tell me. Stand up, I commanded. What? Stand up, Richard. Right now. I could hear the rustle of fabric as he scrambled to his feet. He was obeying me instantly. The power dynamic had completely flipped. Okay, I'm standing. Now what? Look across the street, I said. Look to your left. Do you see the tallest building on the block? The one with the blue glass? The bank tower? No, Richard. Look higher. Look at the name on the top of the building. There was a long pause. I could imagine him squinting against the sunlight, craning his neck. M. G. E. He read slowly. Meredith. Global. Enterprises. Yes, I said softly. I see it. What about it? He sounded confused. That's me, Richard, I said. That building is mine. That company is mine. I am Meredith Global. The phone slipped from Richard's hand. It clattered onto the pavement, the screen cracking further, but the connection held. He scrambled to pick it up, his hands shaking so violently he almost dropped it again. You're lying, he whispered, his brain unable to process the information. You're a housewife. You make soap in the kitchen. You clip coupons. I made soap because I enjoyed the chemistry, I replied, my voice booming from the tiny speaker. I clipped coupons because I wanted to save you money, Richard. Because I knew your ego couldn't handle the truth. The truth? He choked out. The truth is that I have a net worth of over $500 million, I said, stating the number clearly for the board members to hear. They remained silent, respecting the moment. The truth is that I bought your debt to save you from bankruptcy last year. The truth is that the salary you were so proud of? It was subsidized by my contracts with your firm. Richard looked up at the building again. It towered over the city, a monolith of steel and glass, gleaming in the sun. It was a symbol of ultimate power, of unreachable wealth. And his wife, the woman he had called useless, was sitting at the top of it. He felt the blood drain from his head. He felt like an ant looking up at a god. No, he moaned. This is a nightmare. It's reality, Richard, I said. And you broke it. You broke the contract. You broke the marriage. And now, you're broken. Meredith, he cried, falling to his knees right there on the sidewalk. Passers-by gave him a wide berth, looking at the weeping man in the suit with pity and disgust. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. If I had known. If you had known, what? I cut him off sharply. You would have treated me better? You would have loved me? No, Richard. You would have loved my money. You would have loved the power. You never loved me. I did. I do, he lied, desperate to salvage anything. I love you, Meredith. Please, let me see you. Let me explain. Just give me 5 minutes. I paused. I let the silence stretch, letting him sweat. You want to see me? I asked. Yes. Please. Fine, I said. Come to the lobby. I'll be down in 10 minutes. Don't be late. I hung up. I stood up from the table. The board members looked at me with awe. I adjusted my blazer, a white Versace power suit that cost more than Richard's car. Meeting adjourned, I said calmly. I have some trash to take out. Down on the street, Richard stared at the disconnected phone. Hope, blind, stupid hope, flared in his chest. She agreed to see him. That meant she still cared. That meant he had a chance. He wiped his face with his dirty sleeve. He tried to smooth his hair. He looked at his reflection in a shop window. He looked terrible, but he thought, I can charm her. I've always been able to charm her. She's soft. She'll forgive me. He crossed the street, dodging traffic, running toward the Meredith Global Tower. He felt small. The closer he got to the building, the more massive it seemed. The automatic revolving doors spun like the jaws of a beast. He stepped inside. The lobby was cathedral-like. 3 stories high, with waterfalls cascading down marble walls and a security desk that looked like a command center. People in expensive suits walked briskly, radiating purpose and wealth. Richard stood in the center, a blemish on the perfection. The air conditioning chilled his sweat-soaked shirt. He walked to the reception desk. I'm here to see Meredith, he told the beautiful receptionist. Meredith Blackwood. The receptionist looked him up and down, her nose wrinkling slightly. You mean the chairwoman? Do you have an appointment? I'm her husband, Richard said, trying to summon some of his old arrogance. Tell her Richard is here. The receptionist typed something, then looked up with a smirk. Chairwoman Blackwood is expecting you. But she said you are to wait by the service elevator. She doesn't want you blocking the main flow. The service elevator? Richard felt a fresh sting of humiliation. Over there, she pointed. Richard walked to the corner of the lobby. He stood there, shifting his weight, his stomach growling. He waited. And then, the central elevator bank dinged. Not the service elevator. The main, glass-walled executive elevator. The lobby went quiet. Employees stopped and turned. The doors opened. 2 security guards in black suits stepped out first, clearing a path. Then Diane stepped out. And then, I walked out. I wasn't wearing the stained sweatpants he last saw me in. I was pristine. My hair was styled in a sharp, modern cut. My white suit glowed under the lobby lights. I wore diamond earrings that caught the fire of the chandeliers. I walked with my head high, my steps echoing on the marble floor. I didn't look sick. I looked like a titan. Richard gasped. He literally stopped breathing for a moment. He had never seen me like this. He had only seen the domestic version of me, the version he had diminished. This woman was terrifyingly beautiful. I walked straight toward him, stopping 10 feet away. The security guards flanked me, their arms crossed. A crowd had gathered, employees, clients, couriers, all watching the spectacle. Meredith, Richard breathed, stepping forward, his hands reaching out. Oh my God, look at you. Stay back, the guard warned, stepping in front of Richard. It's okay, I said, raising a hand. The guard stepped aside, but remained tense. I looked Richard up and down. I let my gaze linger on his scuffed shoes, his stained trousers, his tear-streaked face. I let the silence stretch until he squirmed. You wanted to see me, Richard? I asked, my voice projecting clearly across the silent lobby. I missed you, he stammered, falling back on his usual lies. I was so worried about you. Are you okay? The fever? I'm cured, I said. It's amazing what removing a toxic parasite from your life does for your immune system. The crowd murmured. Richard flinched. Don't be like that, he pleaded, dropping his voice to a whisper. People are watching. Can we go upstairs? Somewhere private? We need to talk about us. There is no us, Richard, I said. There is me. And there is you. And right now, you are trespassing. Trespassing? I'm your husband. He fell to his knees. Right there on the marble. He thought the dramatic gesture would move me. Meredith, I'm begging you. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I was stressed about money. I took it out on you. I'm sorry. Please, take me back. I love you. I'll do anything. He crawled forward, trying to grab the hem of my trousers. I took a step back, pulling a silk handkerchief from my pocket. I covered my nose and mouth, looking at him with pure revulsion. Get up, I ordered. You're embarrassing yourself. I won't get up until you forgive me, he wailed. Give me another chance. I can change. I can be the husband you deserve. Just let me come home. Let me come back to the house. The house is gone, Richard, I reminded him. And even if it wasn't, you would never set foot in it again. Then let me come live with you. Wherever you are. I don't care about the money. I just want to be with you. I looked at Diane. She handed me a file. You want to be with me? I asked. Or do you want to be with the owner of this building? With you. Only you. Liar, I said calmly. I threw the file at him. It scattered on the floor around his knees. Photographs. Dozens of them. Richard and Tiffany at dinner. Richard and Tiffany looking at rings. Richard and Tiffany laughing while I was at the doctor's office. I've known for 6 months, Richard, I said. I gave you every chance to come clean. I gave you every chance to be a decent human being. But you chose to kick a sick woman out into the street. Richard stared at the photos. He had no defense. Please, he whispered, looking up with dead eyes. I have nowhere to go. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Meredith, spare some change? Help me get a hotel room? Anything? The room held its breath. The mighty Richard Blackwood was begging for pocket change. I looked at him. I felt a twinge of pity, but I crushed it instantly. I remembered his face when he threw the divorce papers at me. I remembered his laugh. You want money? I asked. Yes, please. Just a little. Diane, I said. Yes, Chairwoman? Does Meredith Global have any openings for unskilled labor? No, ma'am, Diane said loudly. Our janitorial staff requires a background check and character references. Mr. Blackwood would not qualify. I looked back at Richard. You heard her, I said coldly. My company doesn't hire beggars. And it certainly doesn't support them. I turned my back on him. Security, I commanded. Escort this man to the boardroom. I have one last thing to show him before you throw him out. Meredith! No! Don't leave me! Richard screamed as the guards hoisted him up by his armpits. I walked to the elevator without looking back. The doors closed, shutting out his screams. I stood in the silence of the elevator, taking a deep breath. It wasn't over yet. I had broken his heart. Now, I had to break his delusion completely. The guards dragged Richard into the conference room on the 40th floor. They shoved him into a chair at the far end of the long table. He slumped there, defeated, his head in his hands. Diane and I entered a moment later. I took my seat at the head of the table. A large screen descended from the ceiling. Look at the screen, Richard, I said. He didn't move. Look at it. I slammed my hand on the table. He jumped and looked up. The screen displayed a timeline. It was titled, Project Husband Investment and Return Analysis. Let's review the last 5 years, Diane narrated, using a laser pointer. Year 1, Meredith secretly arranges your interview at Logistics Corporation. Cost of bribe/influence, $15,000. Richard's mouth fell open. You got me that job? Year 2, Diane continued. Meredith secretly pays off your credit card debt of $40,000 so your credit score qualifies for a car loan. Year 3, Diane clicked the clicker. Meredith Global acquires a 15% stake in your company to ensure you are promoted to director. Cost, $2.5 million. Richard was shaking his head. No. I earned that promotion. I worked hard. You were mediocre, Richard, I said softly. You were always mediocre. I bought your career. Year 4, Diane said. The house. The debt buyout. Phoenix Capital purchases your bad loans. Total exposure, $4.2 million. Monthly payments made by Meredith Blackwood from secret personal account, $25,000. You were paying the mortgage? Richard whispered. But I wrote the checks. You wrote checks to a shell company, I explained. And I deposited the money into that shell company beforehand so the checks wouldn't bounce. I was paying myself, Richard. I was subsidizing your entire life. Why? He asked, tears streaming down his face again. Why would you do that? Because I loved you, I said, the sadness finally seeping into my voice. Because I wanted you to feel like a man. I wanted you to be proud. I thought if you were happy, you would love me back. I did love you. Stop lying. I snapped. Diane, play the video. The screen changed. It was grainy footage from inside our bedroom. Dated 3 days ago. It showed Richard standing over my sickbed. The audio was crystal clear. Listen to me closely, you broke, useless woman. You're a burden. A burden on my life. I'm going to marry my girlfriend Jessica. She understands my position as a successful man. Watching himself on that huge screen, seeing the cruelty in his own eyes, hearing the venom in his voice, Richard finally broke. He covered his ears. Turn it off. Please. I can't watch it. That is the man you are, Richard, I said. That is the successful man. A man who kicks a sick woman when she's down. A man who calls his benefactor useless. The video ended. The screen went black. So here we are, I said. The account is closed. The investment is written off as a total loss. Diane slid a single piece of paper down the long table. It stopped right in front of Richard. What is this? He asked, his voice trembling. Your exit interview, I said. Richard looked at the document. It wasn't a divorce decree. It was a confession of guilt. Read it, I commanded. Richard squinted at the paper. I, Richard Blackwood, hereby confess to committing adultery, emotional abuse, and spousal abandonment. I acknowledge that I knowingly violated the moral clause of my loan agreement. I admit that I have no claim to any assets held by Meredith Blackwood or her entities. Why? He asked, looking up at me. You already took everything. Why do you need this? Because you owe me $400,000 in legal fees and penalties, I said. And I know you can't pay it. But I'm feeling generous. If you sign that document, if you admit, in writing, that you are the villain in this story, I will forgive the debt. I will let you walk away with zero instead of negative $400,000. And if I don't sign? Then I will sue you, I said simply. I will garnish every paycheck you ever earn for the rest of your life. I will make sure you never own a credit card again. I will bury you in so much litigation you won't be able to breathe. Richard looked at the pen. It was a heavy, expensive Mont Blanc. And one more thing, I added. Diane? Diane smiled. Breaking news, Mr. Blackwood. An hour ago, Meredith Global completed a hostile takeover of the logistics firm you work for. We now own 51% of the shares. Richard's eyes widened in horror. My job is gone, I confirmed. As the new majority shareholder, my first act was to restructure the management team. You are fired, effective immediately. For cause. Meaning no severance package. Richard dropped his head onto the table. A deep, guttural sob escaped him. He had lost the past, his assets, the present, his comfort, and the future, his career. He picked up the pen. His hand shook so much he could barely write. But he signed. He signed away his pride. He signed away his lies. He pushed the paper back to me. Are you happy? He whispered. You destroyed me. I didn't destroy you, Richard, I said, standing up. I just stopped saving you. You destroyed yourself. I picked up the confession. I picked up the original divorce petition he had thrown at me, the one Diane had taped back together. I ripped his divorce petition in half. I am the one divorcing you, I said. On grounds of adultery and cruelty. And with this confession, I held up the paper he just signed. It will be granted immediately. You get nothing. I pressed a button on the intercom. Security. Remove him. The guards stepped forward. They hauled Richard out of the chair. He didn't fight. He was a broken shell of a man. Goodbye, Richard, I said. He looked at me one last time. There was no anger left in his eyes. Only regret. An ocean of regret. Goodbye, Meredith, he whispered. They dragged him out. I heard the elevator ding. I heard the doors close. I stood alone in the boardroom. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 5 years, my chest didn't feel tight. I didn't feel the need to hide. I didn't feel the need to shrink myself to make a man feel big. I was Meredith Blackwood. And I was finally free. 6 months later. The city was bustling with the energy of spring. I walked out of the Meredith Global Tower, surrounded by reporters. We had just launched the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping women restart their lives after financial abuse. Ms. Blackwood! Ms. Blackwood, a reporter shouted. What inspired you to start this foundation? I smiled at the camera. Personal experience, I said. I want women to know that their value does not depend on a man's approval. I want them to know they are stronger than they think. My life had blossomed. I reconnected with my family. Sarah and I had Sunday dinners every week. I traveled. I ran my company with a new fire. I was happy. Truly, deeply happy. And Richard? Karma, as they say, has no deadline. I heard through the grapevine what happened to him. After being blacklisted from the corporate world, news of his moral clause violation traveled fast. He couldn't get a job in sales. He couldn't get a loan. Tiffany was arrested 2 months ago for soliciting in a high-end hotel bar. Her modeling career was over. And Richard. One evening, on my way home from a gala, my car stopped at a red light near the wholesale market district. I looked out the window. There, sitting on a crate, eating a sandwich wrapped in wax paper, was a man in a neon safety vest. He looked 10 years older. His hair was graying and unkempt. His hands were dirty with grease. It was Richard. He was working as a day laborer, loading trucks. He looked up as my limousine pulled alongside him. Our eyes met through the tinted glass. I don't know if he could see me, but he stopped chewing. He stared at the car, the symbol of the wealth he had squandered. He didn't look angry. He just looked tired. He looked like a man who had finally learned the value of $1 and the cost of a lie. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't wave. I simply told the driver, "Lights green. Let's go." As the car pulled away, I didn't look back. Life is funny. Sometimes, the people who try to bury you don't realize you are a seed. Richard tried to bury me in dirt and darkness. He thought I would rot. Instead, I grew. I rose. And I bloomed. To all the women listening out there, don't let anyone tell you that you are useless. Don't let anyone make you feel like a burden. You are powerful. You are valuable. And if someone treats you like trash? Well, just remember, you might own the building they're standing on. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please like this video and share it with a friend who needs a reminder of their own strength. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of truth and triumph. Until next time, stay strong. As the story concludes, it leaves us with profound lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the power of transformation. Meredith's journey is a testament to the fact that even in the face of betrayal and adversity, we hold the ability to rise above and reclaim our strength. Her story reminds us that our value is not determined by how others perceive us, but by how we see ourselves and the courage we summon to stand up for our dignity. Life often tests us in unexpected ways, pushing us to discover the depths of our inner strength. Meredith didn't just survive, she thrived, proving that every setback can become a stepping stone to an extraordinary comeback. Her ability to turn pain into purpose inspires us to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth and to never let anyone diminish our worth. What does this story teach you about resilience and self-respect? Share your thoughts below or comment good if you feel empowered by Meredith's journey. Let's celebrate the strength within us all.